Hey everybody, you are watching Press Any Button, and we are back in Unity for a continuation of our run and gun series. Today we're going to be focusing on something that takes us into a bit of the more advanced phase of our game, which is our enemy shooting. And so this is pretty easy to implement. It's going to require a couple of scripts and a few components, but we'll just walk through what we need to do, and hopefully you'll be able to set that up in your own game. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to have an animation for my shot. So usually we just kind of skip this process, but it's kind of important this time around because I need to show you how you can set up your actual shot or bullet or whatever you want to call it. So I drag it over into the hierarchy, and that immediately makes it want to create an animation. And so I'm going to call this enemy beam or enemy bolt. There we go. And then I'm going to save it in the appropriate folder. Hit save. Okay, and then sample size 24. We know this. We know this already. And drag these nodes over to the appropriate places. What I realize is because this is kind of a fast object, we don't really need to space out the nodes in the same way. If I zoom in, have a preview of it. That's pretty good. Prolong the last. And now we don't want to move around this enemy shot or anything, and there's not much we can do with it as it is right now. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call it enemy bolt. And then I'm going to drag it into our assets folder, and that will create what we know to be a prefab. And so this is a single instance of the enemy bolt, but we have infinite uses for it, or we can add it infinite times to our game. And so we want to have this moving. Now, when we created our own shot, we just said we want it to move up and then at various angles depending on which input we would make. Now we want something else to control the direction of our bullet, and that is going to be the place in which the player is standing. So the script is going to be a little more complicated than our other shot script, but I simply go to the inspector and I go to scripts and I find my script, and it's tracker bullet. And so this tracks down our game object, and we'll take a look at this script. So we'll do a quick breakdown of this script. We have some references set up here, and it's looking for an object with the tag player. So our player game object has the tag player on it, and we're pretty much calculating that we want to minimize the amount of distance between the transform on the game object that this script is tied to and the transform of the player object, and we make that into something we call move direction. So it moves direction in the x-axis, moves direction on the y-axis, and because we're only working in 2D, we only need a vector 2 to do that. And so this is our script for our tracking shot, and we can test this out by just dragging instances of this game object. But before we jump into that, I'm going to remove this enemy bolt, and I'm going to work here from the assets folder, and I'm going to set up a couple of things. I want a rigid body 2D. I don't want a collider yet because we're not working on destroying our player, and we don't want these bullets to just move them because that will happen if we make a collider. And then with the body type here, I'm going to go to kinematic and just leave everything as it is, and that should be good. We'll leave the rotation on the z-axis frozen so that we don't have any flipping of the object, because this is a 2D game and we don't want any of that. Finally, we'll just make sure that our player has the player tag attached to it, otherwise our object will not move when it's in the game. Then I'm going to go over to the enemy bolt one more time, just make sure that animator is checked, and I'm going to leave the speed at 1 so we can get a really good idea of what's happening there. Alright, now I can drag my enemy bolt into the scene, and we can see that it follows my player, but not only does it travel left, if I jump over here, it's going to travel right. If I try to jump. Nope, won't let me. But trust me, if I were to try to jump there, it would travel in that direction. We'll try here. And so it travels in the direction that our player is. And this is done all within the start function. So it gets the position of our player once it's been added to the scene, and then it goes in that direction, but it doesn't adjust the direction. If we were to put it in something like void update, then what would actually happen is it would track us really tightly. In fact, it would stick to us almost, and that's not what we wanted. But we can use that on some other features in the game. Alright, now moving on to our enemy right here. We haven't so much as added a new script as we've changed our old behavior script. We've added a couple more things for our enemy to be able to do. And so we can see here on the inspector, there are things like the shot, the bullet spawn, and the fire rate. And so we know how to fill these out. The bullet spawn, I want that to be the position of my enemy game object. And then the shot is the prefab, which we've just made. And the fire rate we can set to, say, 1. And then we'll go over to the scripts and actually take a look at what that new behavior script looks like. So we can see, just under the layer mask, we have a reference to the shot, the public transform, the fire rate, and the next fire. And then if we look down right here, all of this is addressed in void update along with the alert state. So once we reach the alert state, we're going to go into a firing phase, and we can tie an animation to that in the future, but for now we just wanted to get the mechanic right. And so it's going to stop, it's going to be alerted, and it's going to shoot at the same time. And so we can demonstrate that by hitting the play button and seeing what happens. Okay, so here we have it. Our enemies moving around. They hit alert and they shoot at us. I go over here, they hit alert and they shoot at us again. Over here, here, anywhere. And these bullets come our direction. They come our way. And that's it. It's pretty simple. There's a couple of edits that we made to our script, and we figured out how to make it so that our enemy shoots in the direction of our character. So we're not the only one who's able to destroy something in the scene. So it's a fair game. Alright. In the next few parts, we're going to explore making a fixed UI for our character, and that's going to be working with the health for our character. And then we'll continue on to work on level design, actually constructing our levels. But thank you again. This was a really rewarding part for me to do, just that everything kind of worked together and that we're able to just get this simple but really important mechanic in the game. We'll probably work on enemies that will be more of a melee type in the future, as well as boss enemies and things like that. If you want to continue showing that support, then you can subscribe, leave likes, comments, and everything like that. But for now, I'll see you next time.